My parents called me just a walking wallet who doesn't deserve to exist, while plotting to steal my house. They were freeloading in, so I sold it out from under them and left them homeless. Hey Reddit, ever been the guy everyone leans on but no one actually respects? That's been my life for years. I worked my ass off, built everything on my own, only to have my parents freeload off me while praising my sister like she walked on water. Thought I could just suck it up and keep the peace. Until one day, I overheard something that changed everything. Let's just say, I stopped playing the role they wrote for me and started writing my own. I, 31 male, own a house worth more than most people's lifetime earnings, and somehow still get treated like a teenage screw-up living in my parents' basement. Except flip that, because it's my parents living in my house. Yeah, let that one sink in. A few years back, I bought my first big place, worth about $750,000. I worked my ass off for it. Late nights, weekends, the whole grind. I'm not some lottery winner or crypto bro who got lucky. I'm a financial analyst, did the MBA thing, climbed the corporate ladder faster than most people climb out of bed, and had other projects that we paying off good. The plan was simple. Buy the house, live in it alone, maybe eventually share it with a girlfriend or wife if I ever found someone worth my time. Instead, within 2 months, my parents showed up with suitcases like it was some surprise vacation. My dad's construction business had gone belly up, again, and apparently their landlord had suddenly decided to sell their place. Convenient timing, right? Just temporary, my mom said, batting her eyes like she was the lead actress in a bad soap commercial. Only until we get back on our feet. Fast forward 3 years. Still here, still freeloading. Their feet must have been amputated, because they sure as hell never got back on them. And me? I paid for everything. Mortgage, groceries, utilities, their car insurance, their phone plans. You'd think with me bankrolling their entire existence, I'd at least get some respect. Wrong. My parents are the type who could watch me cure cancer and still complain that Heather, 29 female, my sister, gave them grandkids. Heather, by the way, is the family's golden child. She dropped out of community college after her first kid, married Keith, a decent guy who definitely got more than he bargained for, and spends her time being paraded around as the perfect daughter. Every time Heather walks in with her 3 kids, it's like royalty arrived. My dad practically stands and salutes. "There's my girl," he says, giving her hugs like she just returned from a military tour. Meanwhile, I could walk in holding the deed to the house they're living in for free, and I'd get a half-assed "hey son" without even eye contact. Last Thanksgiving was peak comedy. I roasted a turkey, bought all the sides, set the table like it was a Food Network special. Heather waltzed in with a box of grocery store brownies. Guess which one my parents wouldn't shut up about? Heather makes the best desserts. Yeah, because Betty Crocker really nailed that recipe. My parents have this sense of entitlement that's almost impressive. Like the other day, my mom sighed loud enough to wake the dead and said, "David, you really should think about helping your sister with a down payment. It's only fair since you don't have a family to support." I laughed. Not even a normal laugh. A full-on, I can't believe the words that just left your mouth laugh. "Fair?" I said. "You mean fair like me covering your rent, your food, your bills, and your golf games while Heather brings over store brownies and gets a standing ovation?" She gave me that wounded look moms use when they want to guilt trip you. Didn't work. I wasn't a kid anymore. Dads know better. He'll sit at the table scrolling Facebook job ads like he's running the Pentagon. Every now and then he'll sigh and say something like, "The job market's just terrible. Back in my day, you could walk into a site and they'd hire you on the spot. Back in your day," I remind him, "you also tanked 2 businesses and borrowed from me to buy a truck you still haven't paid off." That usually earns me a death glare. But hey, facts don't lie. My friends can't believe I put up with it. But here's the thing. I was playing the long game. I knew eventually the house of cards would collapse. People who live off others always get sloppy. And when it happens, you want to be ready with your ammo. Heather? She's oblivious. Or maybe she chooses to be. She once asked me why I never brag about having parents who live with me. I told her it's because men don't brag about raising their own parents. That shut her up quick. So that's where we're at. I'm a guy with a house, a solid career, and parents who think freeloading is a full-time job. I'm sarcastic about it now because if I don't laugh, I'll probably throw them out the window. But here's the thing you need to understand. I've never been under any illusions about how this ends. They think they're using me. What they don't realize is that I'm just letting the rope run out. And when it does, when I finally pull it tight, they'll realize the son they dismissed as cold or selfish is the one holding all the power. The funny part? They actually believe they've got me wrapped. My dad once said, half joking, that I'd never survive without family. He has no idea, because one day soon, the free ride ends. And when it does, I'm not handing out bus passes. Living with my parents was like watching people play house with my money, like it's Monopoly. They strutted around like they owned the place while I footed every bill. And it wasn't the silence that got to me. It was the little moments where their entitlement slipped through like they were proud of it. One Monday morning, I was heading out the door in a suit, laptop bag ready, and Dad stopped me in the hallway holding the gas bill. "Hey, you should probably pay this before they shut it off." He said it like he was doing me a favor. I asked whose name was on the bill. He looked, muttered yours, tossed it on the counter, and went back to scrolling Facebook like a retiree. That's how serious he took responsibility. Like it was a joke. Mom wasn't any different. One week she cornered me in the kitchen and said, "David, you eat too much takeout. It's expensive." I stared at her. "You mean the takeout I pay for? The stuff you eat too?" Without blinking, she said, "Family shares." I shot back, "Family also contributes. Want to guess which one's missing?" She didn't answer, just shuffled off muttering about me being too focused on money. That was their favorite insult, that I cared too much about money. Which is funny, considering they cared about my money enough to live off it. My mom had perfected the guilt trip tone. Anytime I called them out, she'd say, "Maybe if you weren't so focused on work, you'd have a wife and kids." I always smiled and said, "Maybe if Dad wasn't so focused on failing businesses, he wouldn't be living in his son's guest room." That shut things down pretty quick. Keith, my brother-in-law, was the only one who seemed to get it. One night after dinner, he joined me outside while the kids ran around. "Man, I don't know how you do it," he said. "If my parents pulled half this crap, I'd lose it." I told him, "They're banking on me snapping so they can play the victim. I'd rather let them hang themselves with their own rope." He looked like he wanted to say more but didn't. Can't blame him. He's married into it. What they didn't know was that I'd been keeping receipts. Not metaphorical, literal. Every utility bill, every credit card statement, every Venmo where I covered their junk. I had folders for all of it. Because I knew one day they'd try to flip the story, claim it was a family effort, or that they helped me. When that day came, I wasn't going to argue. I was going to bury them with facts. The disrespect wasn't new, but it was getting louder. My dad would make little jokes at dinner about me signing the house over to them when I settled down. Said it like it was inevitable, like the house was theirs by default. I laughed in his face. "Yeah, not happening. The house stays mine until I'm 6 feet under." But that was the first time I realized something important. They weren't just freeloading. They were plotting. Those jokes weren't jokes. They were planting seeds, testing the waters, trying to see how gullible I was. And if I knew anything about my parents, it's that if they thought they could trick me, they'd try. That's when my patience shifted. It wasn't just about letting them expose themselves anymore. It was about timing. Because once I caught them slipping, I wasn't going to give a lecture or beg for respect. I was going to end the entire arrangement in one clean move. I didn't know when or how, but I knew it was coming. Turns out, my parents made the decision for me. It was a Wednesday afternoon, not exactly a prime time for family drama. I got out of work early after a meeting wrapped faster than expected. I figured I'd swing home, change, maybe hit the gym before dinner. Totally normal plan. But the second I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the lights were on. That was odd. Mom usually had her book club or whatever excuse she used to gossip with friends. Dad pretended to be out networking for jobs. Instead, the house looked dead quiet. I slipped in through the side door, didn't even make a sound. Habit, I guess. That's when I heard it, Dad's voice coming from his so-called office. The storage room I let him pretend is an office, which is really just a dumping ground for his junk. At first, it sounded like any other phone call. "Yeah, Stan, we're still living here. What choice do we have? Market's insane right now." I rolled my eyes. Same script he always used. Blame the market, never himself. Then he said something that froze me mid-step. "That boy? Just a walking wallet I'm using. Beyond that, he doesn't deserve to exist. Heather's my real achievement." I swear my stomach didn't even drop. There wasn't pain. It was like my brain filed it under expected, like I'd been waiting years for proof. And there it was, handed to me clean as day. Stan said something muffled on the other end, but Dad kept going, voice dripping with disgust. "Yeah, he makes money. But what kind of life is that? 31, single, married to his job. Pathetic. And the worst part? He acts like we should thank him for letting us live here. Like I don't choke every time someone asks what I do, and I have to say my son supports me." I leaned against the wall, calm. Not shocked, Not crushed, just done. But apparently, he wasn't finished twisting the knife. The door creaked open, and Mom's voice joined in. "Who are you talking to?" "Stan, just catching up," Dad said. "Oh." Then she lowered her voice like they were swapping secrets. "Did you tell him our plan?" My ears perked up. "Plan?" Dad chuckled. "Not yet, but we'll get him to sign the house over sooner or later. We'll sell it and finally get something near Heather. That's the dream." Mom laughed. Actually laughed. "David's so focused on his career, he'll sign whatever paperwork we put in front of him if we spin it right. He never reads the fine print. He thinks he's smart," Dad added. "But he's still just the kid. We'll handle it." I stood there, not moving, not breathing loud, just letting every word burn into my memory. Should have never been born. Heather's the achievement. Trick him into signing the house over. And there it was, the smoking gun. You'd think I'd be furious, right? That I'd storm in, flip the desk, scream until my throat tore. Nah, that's what they expected. That's the script they wanted. Me losing control so they could call me ungrateful, unstable, whatever card they felt like playing. Instead, I felt this cold calm settle over me. The kind of calm you get when the game is already won, and the other side doesn't even realize they've been checkmated. Because here's the truth. I wasn't going to let them trick me. I wasn't going to confront them and give them a chance to gaslight me. I was going to pull the rug out from under them so fast their heads would spin. I didn't go back to my room. I didn't slam doors or make noise. I just turned around, walked back to my car, and drove. My phone buzzed with emails from work, but I ignored them. I needed space to think. Endgame space. I ended up in the parking lot of my gym, just sitting there, staring at the steering wheel. And for the first time, everything clicked. Every slight, every unpaid bill, every sarcastic comment about me not having a family. It wasn't just entitlement, it was a setup. They actually believed they could play me. That night, I didn't say a word when I got home. They sat at the table, talking about Heather's kids, about some neighbor's dog, about anything but me. Perfect. Let them think I didn't hear a thing. I ate, nodded, went to my room, and pulled out my folders. Every receipt, every bill, every payment I'd made over 3 years. The ammo was stacked and ready. The next morning, I called my financial advisor. "Trevor," I said, "I need to know what it looks like if I sell my house fast and relocate." He paused. "You serious?" "Dead serious." That was it. No second guessing, no guilt. The house was mine legally. Every dollar that kept it running was mine. And the people living in it? They were nothing but squatters with my last name. Over the next few days, I played it cool. Work, gym, dinner. Smiled when Mom made her passive-aggressive comments. Nodded when Dad bragged about Heather's stable family. Meanwhile, I was lining everything up. Realtor, lawyer, new accounts, scouting Denver like I'd been planning the move for years. I wasn't selling just to escape. I was selling to make sure they couldn't touch it, couldn't scheme, couldn't twist it into theirs. Evicting them would have turned into months of court hearings, sob stories, and them playing the victim. Selling the house forced a clean deadline. The contract required vacant possession, which meant they legally had to be out by closing. No appeals, no family trust lies, just a moving date they couldn't ignore. They wanted me to sign it over? Fine. I'd sign, just to buyers who had cash in hand. And when that deal closed, when the check cleared, I'd watch their faces as reality set in. Their ATM had shut down. They thought I was nothing? That I shouldn't have been born? Perfect. Because from that point on, they'd live like I didn't exist. And me? I'd live like a man who finally cut dead weight. So, after hearing that phone call, I didn't lose sleep. I didn't rage, cry, or slam doors like some movie character. I just flipped a mental switch. Game over. They wanted to trick me into signing the house over? Cute. Too bad I'd already been playing chess while they were still stuck at tic-tac-toe. The next morning, I sat in my car before work and made 3 calls. Financial advisor, realtor, lawyer. By lunch, I had meetings set up. By dinner, I had a clear plan forming. It was almost too easy. See, my parents thought they had me cornered because I lived in their home. What they never knew, what nobody knew, was that the suburban house wasn't my only property. About a year earlier, I bought a penthouse downtown. Quiet purchase, paid mostly in cash. 2 bedrooms, skyline view, gym and rooftop access. The works. I kept it off the family radar on purpose because I already knew how my parents operated. You show them something shiny and suddenly it's family property. Nope, that penthouse was my escape hatch. If I sold the house, I wasn't going to be sleeping in my car. I'd just be moving into the place I actually liked more. When I met with my financial advisor, Trevor, He laid it out clean. Market's hot. With your neighborhood, you'll get multiple offers, no problem. You're in a strong spot. Good, I said, because I want it gone fast. He raised an eyebrow. Everything okay at home? Better than ever, I deadpanned. I'm finally remodeling the family. Next came Natalie, the realtor. She specialized in quick, discreet sales for professionals. She toured the house while my parents were at lunch. This place will move quickly, she said, already snapping photos. Good. List it high enough to sting. She smirked. You sound like you've done this before. I grinned. Let's just say I've been waiting a long time. Meanwhile, I started quietly packing my essentials. Documents, jewelry, watches, anything I wasn't leaving behind. My parents thought I was reorganizing my room. They had no idea I was stripping the place of everything important before the buyers even walked in. The irony was thick. Every night at dinner, they'd sit across from me, casually discussing their dream plan of moving closer to Heather once they got settled. Mom would sigh dramatically about how small apartments were beneath her, and Dad would talk about which neighborhoods were good investments. They were making plans for a future they thought I'd bankroll, and I just nodded along, smiling to myself, because the rug was about to be pulled out from under them. The funniest part? They kept dropping hints about me finally settling down. Dad joked, "When you get married, you'll probably want a new place anyway. You could just sign this one over to us." He winked like it was some hilarious father-son inside joke. I raised my glass of water. Yeah, Dad, I'll keep that in mind. If only he knew. The penthouse was my safety net. Nobody in the family knew it existed, not even Heather. I'd kept it a ghost property. Different mailing address, private bank account, no shared info. The house sale wouldn't leave me stranded. It would leave them stranded. I could already picture the look on their faces when they realized I wasn't scrambling for a couch to crash on. I'd be sipping coffee on a balcony overlooking the skyline while they argued about who forgot to check Craigslist for rentals. Within a week, Natalie had the listing live. Professional photos, glowing description. Luxury family home in prestigious neighborhood. Priced to sell. Offers started rolling in almost immediately. I played it cool at home. My parents noticed the photographers, but assumed it was some side project for my job. They didn't even question it. They were so blinded by entitlement, they couldn't imagine I'd actually sell the place. Natalie ran private window showings through her pocket listing network, and I told my parents it was for a work shoot my company needed photos for. They bought it. That weekend, I timed the first open house during one of their brunch outings. 40 families toured, several left offers. By Monday, we had a cash buyer lined up, closing in 21 days. Meanwhile, I scheduled the utility shutoffs for the day of closing, pulled everything out of my name, canceled the lines I was covering for them, and rerouted my mail. I served them written notice that same day to be out by closing. No lease, no rent, just guests. So the 21-day window covered the legal minimum. The entire time, I kept up my routine. Gym at 6 a.m., work, dinner, bed, calm, unshaken. Because here's the truth. Entitled people never expect you to follow through. They're so used to you backing down that when you finally act, it blindsides them. One night, I was on the balcony after a workout, scrolling through the offers on my phone, when my mom came out. "You work too much," she said, sipping tea. I didn't even look up. "Yeah, it's exhausting funding 3 adults." She forced a laugh like I was joking. I wasn't. What I felt wasn't guilt or sadness. It was relief. For once, I was in total control. They'd spent years painting me as selfish, cold, the career-obsessed son. And now, ironically, that exact focus was the reason they were about to lose everything. Because the house wasn't family property. It wasn't a shared dream. It was mine. Bought with my money, maintained with my grind, protected with my foresight. And the penthouse? That was the ace up my sleeve. Even if they tried to paint me as homeless, it'd be a lie. I was already steps ahead, with better views and a better life waiting. So I sat there, scrolling through the finalized offer, smiling to myself. They thought they were plotting to take something from me. What they didn't know was that I'd already taken everything back. They thought they were playing chess, but they were pawns on my board. And pawns don't make it to the other side. 3 days after the buyer signed the purchase agreement, I came home to find my parents waiting in the living room, like some budget version of an intervention. The way the furniture was set up, it was obvious. Sofa facing a single chair, their arms crossed, faces locked into serious parent mode. Heather was there too, looking nervous. "Sit down," Dad said in that old, authoritarian tone, like I was still 12 and he was about to ground me for not mowing the lawn. I didn't sit. I leaned against the wall, cool as ice. What's this? Family therapy session? Mom clasped her hands dramatically. David, we're worried about you. You've been secretive. And we heard from Heather about these rumors you're selling the house. Tell us it isn't true. I smiled. Okay, it isn't true. Their shoulders dropped for a second, relief washing over them, until I added, it's not a rumor. It's a fact. The buyers signed last week. Closing is in 2 weeks. The silence after that could have choked a horse. Dad's face turned purple so fast I thought he'd pop a vein. Heather's mouth dropped open. Mom's eyes filled with instant tears, her favorite weapon. You can't just sell our home without asking us, she cried. Our home? I raised an eyebrow. It's my home. Deeds in my name. Mortgage in my name. Bills in my name. You've paid exactly $0 in 3 years. Remind me again whose home this is? Heather shifted uncomfortably, like she'd walked into the wrong movie. David, maybe we should just... No, Dad snapped, cutting her off. He's being selfish. After everything we've done for him. I laughed so hard it echoed. Everything you've done for me? Let's put that theory to the test. I pulled out a thick folder from my bag and tossed it on the coffee table. Paper spilled out. Bills, receipts, bank transfers, spreadsheets. This, I said, is everything I've spent keeping this place running and keeping you two alive. Mortgage? Every dime for 3 years. Utilities, groceries, their bills, even Dad's truck and Mom's teeth. Hell, I even covered Heather's kids' school fees while they took the credit. Add it up and you're looking at hundreds of thousands, all out of my pocket, not a cent from theirs. Heather's head snapped toward them. Wait, my kids' school fees? They froze. Busted. Oh, you didn't tell her? I said casually. Yeah, those weren't family gifts. That was me writing checks while you two took credit. Shocking, right? Heather's face went pale. You told me you paid those, Dad stammered. We, helped arrange it. Don't lie, I cut in, my voice sharp. You used me as your personal ATM and painted yourselves as the heroes. Congratulations, your daughter just found out the truth. Heather looked like she'd swallowed glass. Keith wasn't there, but I knew when she got home, she'd unload all of this on him. Good. They deserved the fallout. Mom's tears turned off like a faucet, replaced by anger. David, you're twisting things. Families support each other. We raised you. We gave you everything. Stop, I said, holding up a hand. You raised me by ignoring me while praising Heather for breathing. You gave me nothing but lectures and disrespect. And you think because you fed me dinner a few thousand times 30 years ago, I owe you my entire adult life? That contract expired the second I turned 18. Dad leaned forward, his face red. If you think you can throw us out, we'll fight you. We'll take you to court. Verbal agreements hold up. This was supposed to be a family trust. I grinned, leaning in close. Perfect. I'd love to go to court. Because you know what judges love? Receipts, documentation, and I have all of it. Meanwhile, you two? You've got nothing but your word. And frankly, your word is worth less than a scratched lottery ticket. The room went dead quiet. Heather looked like she wanted to melt into the carpet. Mom's jaw tightened. Dad sat back, shaking his head like I was the villain. You'll regret this, he muttered. I laughed again. No, Dad, you will. Because in 2 weeks the locks change. And while you're scrambling for a crappy apartment, I'll be sipping coffee from a balcony downtown. They blinked at me, confused. What balcony? Mom demanded. That's when I dropped the bomb. Oh, didn't I mention? I've had a penthouse downtown for over a year. Paid in cash, skyline view, gym, rooftop pool. It's mine. I just never told you because I knew if I did, you'd try to claim it was family property. The look on their faces was priceless. Total shock. They thought I'd be out on the street with them when the house sold. They never imagined I had a backup plan better than the house they freeloaded in. Heather finally spoke, her voice low. So all this time, you were planning an exit? I shrugged. Not at first, but the second I overheard Dad telling Stan I was nothing and that Heather was his real achievement, the second I heard you two plotting to trick me into signing this house over, yeah, the exit plan became permanent. Dad's face drained of color. He knew I had him dead to rights. Mom tried to jump in, voice trembling. You misheard, David. We'd never... Save it, I said coldly. I heard every word. And the best part? I don't need to scream. I don't need to fight. I don't even need to prove it to Heather. Because the house is already sold. There's no undo button. Heather stood, grabbing her bag. I can't believe this. She shook her head at them. Not me. You lied to me for years. Took his money and acted like it was yours. This is disgusting. She walked out without another word. The slam of the door was the final nail in their coffin. I looked back at my parents. Two people who spent years convincing themselves they were in control. Two people who underestimated the one person keeping them afloat. Enjoy the next 2 weeks, I said, heading for the door. Because after that, you're not my problem anymore. Their silence followed me out like a shadow. But for the first time, I felt lighter than ever. Like I'd been carrying a backpack of bricks for years and finally just dropped it on the curb. The house was sold, the penthouse was waiting, and my parents? They were officially on borrowed time. I didn't even bother hiding my moves anymore. The following week, movers showed up to start boxing things. My dad cornered one of them in the hallway. "What are you packing?" "Owner's request," the guy replied. "Owner?" Dad barked. I walked by, sipping my coffee. Yeah, that'd be me. His face turned the color of raw steak, but what could he do? He had no leverage. He stomped off, muttering about family betrayal. And I almost told him betrayal was plotting to scam your son out of his house. But why waste good material? By the time closing week rolled around, the tension in the house was nuclear. Mom had given up the fake tears. She barely looked at me anymore, like ignoring me would magically cancel the sale. Dad tried guilt. "You'll regret this when we're gone. You'll wish you had your parents around." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'll regret not doing it sooner." Closing day came and went like clockwork. Signed, sealed, delivered. Buyer's money cleared, keys handed over, and the buyers changed the locks that afternoon. The contract required vacant possession, so I gave them written notice to be out by closing and even booked movers for the morning of. They thought it was a bluff until the trucks pulled up. That night, I didn't sleep at the house. I went straight to my penthouse, stretched out on the leather sofa, and stared out at the skyline. Slept like a baby. The real show started the next day. My parents had no backup plan. None. They thought they had months, maybe years, to mooch until I settled down and handed it all over. Now, suddenly, they were in Heather's guest room, with 3 kids running around and Keith watching every move. At first, Heather tried to play peacemaker. "It's temporary," she told me over the phone. "They just need time to adjust." "Adjust to what?" I asked. "Reality?" She didn't answer. Turns out Keith wasn't having it. 2 weeks in, I got a text from him. "You really weren't exaggerating. They're impossible." Apparently, Dad spent his days hogging the TV and criticizing Keith's business. Mom complained about the noise, the food, the space. They contributed nothing, just like at my place. Keith finally snapped one night when Dad called his cooking cheap. Keith told him straight up, "If you don't like it, leave." The next morning, Heather called me. "Keith says they have to go. He can't take it anymore." I didn't even hide my grin. Good for him. They bounced around a bit after that. Crashed at a cousin's place for a week, until the cousins suddenly had renovations that required them to leave. Tried staying with an old church friend, but that lasted 3 days before the friend realized freeloaders don't come with an expiration date. Eventually, they landed in a crappy apartment complex on the outskirts of town. Moldy walls, thin carpet, leaky faucets, the whole package. Exactly the kind of place my dad used to mock when he bragged about one day retiring in comfort. Now it was home sweet home. But the humiliation didn't stop there. No, they decided to make it worse for themselves. A month later, I got served papers. My parents were suing me. The claim? That I had made verbal promises to keep the house as a family trust, and selling it violated those promises. They were actually trying to argue that the house legally belonged to the family, because I once said, "This will always be our home," at a Christmas dinner years ago. I laughed so hard the process server asked if I was okay. My lawyer, Patricia, absolute shark, was almost disappointed by how weak the case was. "They have nothing. You have receipts, ownership documents, bank records. This won't just get thrown out, it'll get laughed out." And she was right. Court day came, and my parents shuffled in looking like they'd already lost. They tried their best. Mom did her fake crying routine. Dad ranted about ungrateful children. The judge cut them off halfway through. "Do you have any written agreements? Any legal documents?" Dad stammered. "Well, no, but he said..." The judge sighed. "This is a waste of the court's time. Dismissed." Boom. Case closed. On the way out, Dad hissed at me, "You'll regret humiliating us like this." I smiled. "I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourself." Word got around fast after that. Family, friends, neighbors. Everyone knew they'd tried to sue their own son and lost. Their reputation tanked overnight. The same people they used to brag to about Heather's kids now whispered about how pathetic they'd become. Meanwhile, my life couldn't have been better. The penthouse felt like freedom. Work was thriving. I finally had space to breathe without their constant guilt tripping. Heather called me one night, voice heavy. Keith says they can't come here anymore. He's done. He doesn't want the kids growing up thinking this behavior is normal. I almost felt bad for her, stuck in the middle. But she wasn't the one who created this mess. That was all on them. The last I heard, my parents were still in that dingy apartment, complaining about the noise from upstairs neighbors and how unfair life was. And honestly, I hope they stay there. Maybe for once they'll understand what it's like to live without someone carrying them. As for me, I didn't regret a damn thing. After court, life went quiet. For me, anyway. My parents were in freefall. Word spread fast that they'd sued me and lost, and it wasn't just a loss. It was public. Family, friends, neighbors, even people at church whispered about it. Nobody respected them anymore. The freeloaders got exposed, and everyone knew it. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Penthouse mornings with skyline views, gym downstairs, zero stress. Work kept climbing. Promotions, bigger clients, and with no dead weight hanging on me, my bank account started looking even better. For the first time in years, my money was mine. Heather still called sometimes. She was done defending them. Keith wanted nothing to do with them at all. They burned every bridge, she told me once. Even the cousins don't want them around. They're toxic. Yeah, I said. Welcome to my side of the family reunion. She laughed, but we both knew it wasn't a joke. My parents, on the other hand, couldn't accept reality. They kept bouncing between self-pity and anger. Mom would send long texts about how family should stick together. Dad tried playing tough guy, telling anyone who would listen that I'd betrayed them. The irony was almost too good. Then came the phone call. It was a Tuesday night. I was halfway through dinner when my phone lit up with his name. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. David, Dad's voice cracked. Nothing like the booming tone he used when he thought he was in charge. We need help. Rent's overdue. Your mother's sick. We can't keep this up. Please. I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. You know, it's funny, I said, because not long ago, you told your buddy Stan I shouldn't exist, that Heather was your real achievement. Remember that? Silence on the line. He knew what was coming. You said I shouldn't exist. Now act like I don't. Click. Call ended. That was it. No guilt, no second guessing. Just done. After that, the begging slowed. They must have realized I meant it. Maybe they hoped Heather would cave, but Keith wasn't playing savior. And without me funding their every move, their world shrank fast. Cheap apartments, dollar menu dinners, no one to brag to, no one to mooch from. Me? I leveled up. I stopped wasting energy on people who saw me as a wallet. My career took off, my health improved, my circle got tighter. I spent weekends traveling, meeting new people, enjoying life without the constant weight of their entitlement. Looking back, it wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclaiming my own life. For years, I'd been their responsible son, the guy who did everything right, only to be trashed behind my back. The moment I cut them off, I stopped playing that role. And the best part? They lost their golden goose forever. The house, the lifestyle, the endless supply of cash, they'll never see a dime of it again. Now, when I look out from my penthouse balcony, I don't feel guilt. I feel pride. Because I didn't just survive their games, I won. And they're stuck in the mess they created.